Have you ever been told you weren't good enough? Have you ever heard the words worthless, useless, you'll never amount to anything, said so many times that some part of you started to believe them? Maybe it wasn't said in those exact words. Maybe it was a look, a silence, a comparison that stung more than any insult could. Today, I want to tell you the story of a boy named Arav, a boy the entire village had already decided was worthless, a boy who was mocked so often that he had almost stopped arguing, and an old woodcarver who taught him something with a single rupee note that would change how he saw himself forever. If you have ever doubted your own worth, stay until the end, because what this old man taught Arav is something every single one of us needs to hear, at least once in our lives.
In a small farming village, surrounded by wheat fields and dusty roads, there lived a boy named Arav. He was 15 years old, thin, quiet, and, by every measure the village respected, completely unremarkable. He could not plow a field like the other boys. He tired quickly carrying water. He had no interest in wrestling matches at the village fair, no skill with cattle, no strength the elders admired. What Arav had instead was a small carving knife, a habit of collecting broken pieces of wood, and hours spent alone at the edge of the forest, shaping things no one asked him to shape. His father sighed whenever he saw him carving. His mother worried quietly, and the other boys in the village had a name for him: worthless. They said it so often, at the well, in the fields, at the market, that Arav had stopped flinching. He simply nodded, picked up his things, and walked away. He had started, somewhere deep down, to believe they were right. It was market day when it finally broke him. Arav had brought one of his carvings to the square, a small wooden bird, wings outstretched, carved from a piece of driftwood he'd found by the river. He didn't plan to sell it. He simply wanted, for once, for someone to look at it and see something worth seeing. Instead, one of the older boys snatched it from his hands, held it up, and laughed. "Look at this," he called out to the gathering crowd. "Arav thinks carving toys makes him worth something. Go plow a field like a real man." Laughter rippled through the market. Someone tossed the little wooden bird into the dirt. Arav bent down, picked it up gently, brushed the dust from its wings, and walked away without a word. But that night, alone in his room, he did something he had never done before. He took every carving he owned, years of quiet, careful work, and shoved them into a sack to throw away. "They're right," he whispered. "None of this is worth anything. I'm not worth anything." Arav decided to throw the sack into the river at the edge of the village, past the last houses, past the old workshop that belonged to Ustad Bhola, the village's retired master woodcarver, a man few people visited anymore. As he passed, the old man's voice stopped him. "That's a heavy sack for such a light boy." Arav froze. He hadn't expected anyone to be watching. "It's just wood," Arav muttered. "Worthless wood." Ustad Bhola stepped into the lantern light, wiping shavings from his weathered hands. His eyes moved slowly from the sack to the boy's face, really looking at him, the way almost no one in the village ever had. "Come inside," he said simply. "Let an old man show you something before you throw all that away." Arav hesitated. Then, for reasons he couldn't fully explain, he followed him in.
Ustad Bhola reached into a small tin box on his workbench and pulled out a crisp, folded rupee note. He held it up to the lantern light. "What is this worth?" he asked. Arav frowned. "It's just a note, whatever it says on it." "Correct." The old man nodded. Then, without warning, he crumpled the note tightly in his fist, dropped it to the dusty workshop floor, and pressed his boot down on it, grinding it into the dirt. He picked it up, creased, dirty, torn slightly at one corner, and held it out again. Now what is it worth? Arav stared at the crumpled, dirty note. The same. It's still worth the same amount.
Exactly. Ustad Bhola set it down gently on the workbench. It doesn't matter how many times it gets crumpled, stepped on, or thrown in the dirt. Its value was never in how clean it looked, or how many people respected it in that moment. Its value was printed into it before anyone touched it, and no amount of mishandling can print it out again. He looked directly at Arav. You have been crumpled, boy, stepped on, thrown in the dirt by careless people who never once looked closely enough to see what was actually there. But tell me, does that change what was printed into you before any of them opened their mouths? Arav said nothing. His eyes had filled with tears he refused to let fall.
Ustad Bhola reached onto a high shelf and brought down a piece of wood, gray, cracked, twisted, the kind of driftwood most people would step over without a second glance. 15 years ago, he said, a merchant tried to sell me this piece as firewood. Ugly, useless, not worth a single coin, he said. He set it on the workbench beside a finished carving, a stunningly detailed wooden crane, its grain glowing warm gold and deep amber under the lantern light, wings so delicate they looked ready to lift into flight. Arav's breath caught. That's the same wood?
The very same piece. Ustad Bhola ran his thumb along the crane's wing. I didn't add anything to it. I only removed what wasn't the crane. The beauty was always inside that ugly, twisted piece of driftwood, waiting for someone patient enough to look past the outside and carve away everything that wasn't the truth of it. He looked at Arav's sack of carvings, still sitting untouched by the door. The village sees the rough outside of you and calls it worthless. They are not wrong that the outside looks rough, boy. They are only wrong about what that means.
Arav knelt beside the sack and slowly opened it. He lifted out the small wooden bird, the one thrown into the dirt at the market, and turned it over in his hands the way Ustad Bhola had turned over the crumpled note. It was the same bird. Nothing about it had changed, but something in how Arav saw it had changed completely. They called me worthless, he said quietly, because I couldn't plow a field or win a wrestling match. And a rupee note is not judged by whether it can carry water, Ustad Bhola said. It is judged by what is printed into it. Your worth was never going to be found in the fields, boy. It was already printed into your hands. You simply needed someone to stop stepping on you long enough to notice. Arav held the little wooden bird against his chest, and for the first time in longer than he could remember, he did not feel worthless. He felt found.
Arav did not throw his carvings in the river that night. Instead, he returned to Ustad Bhola's workshop the next morning, and the morning after that. The old man taught him patiently how to read the grain of a piece of wood, how to see the shape hiding inside before a single cut was made. The village boys still laughed sometimes. Old habits die slowly. But their words no longer landed the way they used to. A crumpled note does not uncrumple itself in a day, but it also never stops being worth exactly what it always was.
Years later, a traveling merchant passed through the village and stopped at a small stall displaying carved birds with wings so delicate they looked ready to take flight. He asked who had made them. A quiet young man stepped forward. Not the strongest man in the village, not the loudest, but steady, certain, and entirely his own. I did, Arav said. I want to speak to you directly now. Maybe you've heard the word worthless too, spoken by others or whispered by the quiet, cruel voice in your own head. Maybe the world has judged you by a skill you don't have, a field you can't plow, a race you were never built to win. I want you to remember what Ustad Bhola taught Arav. You can be crumpled, you can be stepped on, you can be thrown in the dirt by careless people who never looked closely enough to see what was actually air. None of that changes what was printed into you before any of them opened their mouths. You are not what they say you are. You are what was carved into you, long before they ever touched you.